Iran to kraj na Bliskim Wschodzie, który od czasów islamskiej rewolucji w 1979 roku jest teokracją. 16 września 2022 roku irańska policja moralności pobiła na śmierć młodą kobietę Mahsę Amini, co wywołało protesty w całym Iranie wzywające do obalenia reżimu. Główną siłą napędową tych protestów są młode osoby i kobiety, stąd slogan kobiety, życie, wolność. Artyści w Iranie oraz irańscy artyści za granicą również grają bardzo ważną rolę w rewolucji, która ma właśnie miejsce w Iranie. Protesty w Iranie nie doprowadziły na razie do obalenia reżimu, choć wielu, w tym osoby z irańskiej diaspory, nazywają wydarzenia w kraju rewolucją, stąd też nasze użycie tego terminu. Pomimo tego, że nadal jest to nielegalne, wiele młodych kobiet wychodzi do miejsc publicznych bez hijabu, co jeszcze kilkanaście miesięcy temu byłoby nie do pomyślenia. Już tego typu przemiana może być interpretowana jako swego rodzaju rewolucja. Dziś porozmawiamy z Lilinaz, która pochodzi z Iranu, mieszka za granicą i jest studentką politologii oraz filmoznawstwa. Właśnie skończyła reżyserować swój pierwszy film For Her. Please tell us about how the revolution in Iran started. Is it still going on or is it dying down?
So the revolution started on September 16th, 2022 as a result of Mahsa Dżina Amini's death. She was killed by the morality police for improper following improper dress codes, and she was in the hospital in a coma, and then she passed away from being beaten by them. And this moment was something that sparked a revolution, not because of one death, but because of this accumulation of tension and this desire to live a normal life and have these basic human rights. Ever since, there were mass protests over months. There were strikes within different cities within the country, and there were many forms of resistance that have taken place, from music, such as the song Baroye by Shervin Hajipur, to art. We have many of our artists still sitting in prison, many of our intellectuals, activists still sitting in prison as the Islamic Republic continues to have violent backlash. That being said, the people have continued. We are still seeing protests today, even if they're smaller in nature. The resistance has not died down.
As you mentioned, the revolution started on the 16th of September. I know you went to Iran over the summer. Did it feel like a revolution was in the air?
Definitely. There was a lot of tension in the air in Iran prior to this incident. And the reason for that is because a lot of women in Iran were just kind of done with these forced rules and these forced dress codes. And so I witnessed it myself of girls just taking their headscarves off, not caring anymore and not having the energy to, care anymore. And to that end, the government itself had changed, and when President Raisi came to power, he is a conservative leader and he was trying to further enforce these dress codes with the morality police, and they actually began shutting down coffee shops and places where young people go to enjoy one another with their friends, taking their hijab off, and they actually started shutting down a lot of these coffee shops and these spaces where youth had like these little signs of resistance. And so the tension was definitely there, seeing how the culture was really pulling itself out and the government was trying to crack down more than ever.
So what is it like being a woman in Iran now during the revolution? Do you keep in touch with people back there?
Being a woman in Iran right now, it has, two sides of it. There's the one side of like your life has to continue. And again, this is speaking more generally, but of course it depends on your class, on your family, on where in the country you are, on what your ethnicity is. But more generally speaking, lives continue. Women have to still go to school or go out, do their, work, and they can't just continue the resistance on their own. And the men have taken part in the resistance, and it's really a national thing. But lives continue, That being said, it is very clear that the resistance hasn't died, and the Islamic Republic is targeting women within the country. Right now, schoolgirls are being poisoned all over the country, and it's horrifying to see them target these young girls who don't even understand what's happening and are just the victims of it all, and it's horrifying, truly. But on the flip side, people do stay in their houses, or people stay hidden, or depending on who you are. So there's of course there's two sides to any society when it comes to a revolution.
The perception of Iran usually is that it's a very deeply religious country. It is called the Islamic Republic. Do you think that that's reflected within the sentiments of young people in Iran?
I would say no, but I would like to explain because there are definitely large communities of Muslims within Iran, and that is nothing that I would negate. Islam is a part of our, history as much as it is a part of a lot of Iranians, faith and culture, but so are other faiths. And that being said, I think after living in a theocracy for over 40 years, there's a bitter taste in the mouth of young people, and I think culturally speaking, they've really pulled themselves out. There's no faith base for youth to believe in something higher when there's a government oppressing you and forcing you to believe it. They've kind of ruined it, and that's how it's perceived by Iranians looking to their regime. I don't think that the government's morals and the way that they are reflects in the youth culture at all anymore.
You are part of the Iranian diaspora, and you lived in France for a while. What was it like being Iranian in France?
Being an Iranian in France was a very interesting experience because personally I'm not religious, so I never felt, out of place in France, and it felt like a very lovely place to be. Definitely the diaspora is smaller, and I feel like the diaspora within France has integrated a lot more to the point that French Iranians feel like, they have a place in the society that they're in. And I love that feeling because, in many ways, I think French culture, there's certain parallels, I wouldn't say huge parallels, but certain parallels and certain things that did make me reconnect to my home, even if it's just the cars that I see on the street, the Peugeot reminding me of home. So, and I really did enjoy having that perspective, and we were in an international university, so actually meeting students from all over within France and within Europe was also a very eye-opening experience.
And how would you compare living in France to living in the US?
I think the US is very different in that the Iranian diaspora is much larger and very active and very, very active, especially with this revolution. So I think the diaspora, having different types of diaspora here as well, because we have Iranians who literally are here on visas, studying at universities here, and we have Iranians who've grown up here their whole life. And I think that's a very interesting mix of, experiences within the Iranian community itself. And so I'm blessed to be surrounded by people who are of the same culture and nationality, and who are, during this revolution, fighting alongside me, protesting, and I feel like there's a community to go to try to be a part of this movement of amplifying Iranian voices. So in that sense, it's a bit different.
You also went on a brief vacation to Poland. How was that like?
Going to Poland was an amazing experience. Prior to visiting, I had some stereotypical perceptions because I had visited some Eastern European countries, and compared to Western European, you always hear the stereotypes, and as an Iranian, I'm not new to stereotypes, but I'm saying that it's less developed, it's less this or less that, and to me, Warsaw was such a beautiful place. Poland, the country, was such a beautiful place to visit because it kind of broke all those stereotypes I had in my head. And it showed me that Warsaw is such a youthful city. And it was so lovely to meet so many Polish people who were interested and fascinated by Iran and, curious as much as I was curious about your culture. And even one of my friends started playing a song called Arash by Arash. And it was just eye-opening because it was crazy that he was singing along to a Farsi song, because since he was a kid, that song had been, kind of imported to Poland, and seeing that cultural exchange, even having been there before I'd arrived, it's just such a fascinating feeling, and it was really, really a great experience. You
just wrapped your movie about Iran For Her. Yeah. Could you tell us a bit more about what it's about?
Definitely. So For Her, in English, and Baray Khoharonam in Farsi, which means to my sisters, the reason for the two names, just to briefly explain, is because we don't have her or him in Farsi. We don't have the gendered terms. So it's to my sisters because of also the song of Baroye by Shervin Hajipur, and But the film itself is actually about a girl named Mahnoz, who's an Iranian American in the diaspora, who immigrated to the U.S. earlier in her life, kind of being so consumed by what's going on in Iran with the revolution, as we all have, that she begins kind of manifesting and seeing this figure named Roshan. And Roshan to her is a girl who speaks, dresses, and is someone who's from Tehran, literally picked out of the city and brought here. And the relationship these two girls develop from, an Iranian girl and an Iranian American girl kind of brings out all those emotions within the revolution, the rawness of it, the fear, the guilt, the hope, and everything that comes with that. And it's really a way to tell the story of both women, and that's what it's about.
And what was your motivation behind doing this movie?
Well, originally when the revolution happened, as all artists, I was like, how do I get involved? How do I use the tools in my toolbox to be a part of amplifying Iranian voices? And I wanted to make a short film, and originally it was going to be like a 3-minute, 4-minute project, something that's just, quick and something that actually will be done in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. But that being said, it was really important to me to tell the story of Iranian women within Iran, because as much as I think the diaspora has a story to tell of their own, the revolution's happening in Iran, and the brave women are within the country fighting. So I really wanted that to be a part of the film and the story that I tell. And given I'm a student and we're on student budgets, I couldn't create sets upon sets of recreating Iran itself. But what I could do is get creative and think of how to represent an Iranian woman within a film that's placed in the US. And that's how I kind of came up with the idea. It was with those constraints of how do I tell the story that I want to tell. And when I came up with the idea, it turned into an ambitious film, because I was like, I don't want to cut it short, I don't want it to be a half-told story. And so I really let it flow to the 30-minute short film that it is, and that it's bilingual, so that audiences in both countries can actually indulge in what the story has to tell.
And are you planning on doing any more projects about Iran?
I'm hoping to, yes. I mean, For Her, we've seen so much support from the diaspora. We've seen so much funding come in and help with us to tell the story. And I think with that same support and momentum, I'd like to continue to amplify Iranian voices however I can. Probably the next project will be more documentary style, maybe try to tell more individual stories. But really the goal is finding creative ways to amplify Iranian voices within the country. I think that's the goal of everyone in the diaspora. So I hope to continue to do that after this project.
And what future do you see for the revolution in Iran? And what would it take for the revolution to succeed?
I personally believe, and this is something that I have to believe to continue living and moving through life, is that this revolution will succeed, and that we have to continue to have hope. At the end of the day, the Islamic Republic is a very violent regime, and they will do whatever it takes to maintain that grip on power. But I believe that this revolution will succeed, and what it needs to succeed is that momentum to continue, and for people to not lose sight of what they're fighting for. And really, I don't think there's any turning back. There's been so many deaths. There have been so many lives lost, children, adults, everyone who's been involved in this. And I think that bitterness, that will never leave anyone in Iran. And I think that the days of this regime are limited. I think it's just a matter of keeping that momentum, masses hitting the streets, and keeping unity. Because once you let fear seep in, that's when they can continue to push and maintain their control.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
When does your film come out?
My film is currently in post-production, and hopefully we'll wrap editing by this summer and premiere it by September.
Okay.